Hi, my name is Sarah Carranza, and today I will be talking to you about watching television and what makes you watch television. All right, so I want to say, first of all, that I actually believe it's the production value that makes you keep coming back for more. Um, so let me start off with a little history for you. Television was actually started to be thought of as something that was possible around the late 1800s. Um, we know television has started being commercialized after 1940 in the 1950s when everything became more commercialized. But actually, the first American television show ever to be broadcasted was filmed live in 1928. And the name of that show was called The Queen's Messenger. Just so we know a little bit more about that show, it was a soap opera. It was the first scripted drama in American television history, and they used three cameras. Three. The first was for props and small little things. Props is short for properties, which you use like a pen, something that you use on screen. The second was also for props, but it also traveled throughout the set because it was filmed live. And the third was for close-ups. So the close-ups that were shown from that one night of television has still been a practice that's still used today. So when we watch television, we think of Dawson from Dawson's Creek crying because he couldn't get Joey Potter, and James Van Der Beek, still makes fun of him about that, but we never would have seen that face, the hoo 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 face, if there hadn't been a close-up. So if it was too far away, you would only have like this small little itty bitty kind of person, and you wouldn't have been able to make that connection. With that being said, it was also very important to know that television screens at this time, in 1928, were no bigger than an index card. So that literally meant that the screen was probably that big, definitely no bigger than that. So what had to be done was so that the audience could actually see what was happening and get to know these characters, you had to have a close-up. There was absolutely no way for there to be a long in the distance lover coming to get you, because you never would have been able to see that in such a small screen. Now that that is put out there, I would also like to say that American television developed way later than television in Europe. 5 to 7 years later, after The Queen's Messenger aired, there was only 55 houses in New York City that had television broadcast to them. Meanwhile, in London, they had 3,000 televisions in like households being broadcasted to. Of course, it was sporting events, but still. Also, with that in mind, the idea that The Queen's Messenger was one of the first television programs helps realize that in 1949, when the soap opera, as we know it, began having more network time, not just one channel, it would have been like 3 different channels. We know that people like soaps. And after the soap launched, it then became the Western, like Roy Rogers and all those kind of things. With the little history now put on the floor for you, I'd like to start talking about the television seasons. We actually know that television seasons start before they're even up on the air. And by that, I mean pilot season. Pilot season is referring to the first episode in an entire series that really, like it kind of says in its own word, it pilots the rest of everything in that television show. So what pilot season is, it's in the spring. They start production on these scripts from the spring to the summer for fall premiere week, which a lot of people look forward to, because when they're filming these pilots, you get reruns of your favorite shows, and sometimes that kind of runs them into the ground. So you're looking for that fresh new thing, and it's actually with with pilot season. So with that in mind, it takes a lot to get a pilot to work, get a pilot on the air. First, you need a pitch, which means you need a script. So first you write the script, or you have the script written. Then you have to go to the network, the television networks, and you have to talk to the producers and whatnot and say, hey, I like this script. It's a mixture of Dawson's Creek meets vampires meets whatever you need to do to get it picked up is what you need to do. Now, just because a network or a production company accepts the script does not mean it's going to get produced. Sometimes they grab what they like and then they just keep it. So the next step after the pitch is another re-pitch, I guess you can say. So you get the network to go to a production company and say, you need to make this television show. So you go through the network. Now you go through the production company. The production company is then in charge of the production. So they make the casts, they make the editing choices and all that kind of thing. So then you went through the production company, and now you need to go back through the networks. The television networks then decide from the pilots that they saw which one they're actually going to put on the air for you to watch. So that means your script needs to be good. In fact, that means that you need to know your television structure. So there are two structures. There's an hour long, and then there's a 30-minute long, which half an hour, which actually only means when you have half an hour, you only have 21 minutes, and when you have an hour long, you only have really 41 minutes, leaving the rest of that time for commercials, so you can get paid, or the networks can get paid. So with that, you have a 5-minute at the beginning teaser, and that's supposed to grab you from the beginning, and it needs to have a lot of plot. Basically, a car will break down, or an earthquake happens, like in Modern Family, one of my favorite episodes ever, or someone's been cheated on and you just figured it out. So that's going to grab you for the rest of the episode. And then you go to commercial, and then you either have 3 acts for the 30-minute, or 4 acts for a full hour show. Each act needs to have a build, and then for the next act, you'd learn from it. Although, just like a novel that you would read or you learned in English class, you need the climax and then you need the decline, the new norm. But all of that structure, all of that plot movement doesn't mean anything without character. It's commonly known as parasocial interaction. Now, to put that into terms that even I need to understand, is viewers like you or me get a connection with a television character. To be quite honest, it means that you feel like you bonded with them. So when you go home, you don't talk about Rachel Green, you talk about Rachel. Oh, did you see how she cut up her credit cards? Oh, this happened, this happened. You talk like you actually know them. And I know you don't, because, well, we don't. They're fictional characters. So that bond needs to be so welded together. It needs to be glued so that people want to keep watching. The thing with needing to bond with these characters is that marketing is not the same as it once was even in the 20s, the 40s, the 50s, or the 60s, not even the 80s. We now have the internet. With that being said, you can have the best characters in the world. You can have the best plot in the world. But if it doesn't hack it on television, they don't want to lose your viewership. So they're going to cut it. That just happened this last pilot season, or this last premiere season, with the show Lone Star on Fox. What happened was that the viewers weren't picking up what they were putting down, and so they had to cut it with only 3 episodes that have aired. It was critically acclaimed and everything. So really, viewership and the other people who watch it really means that you can keep watching it for more than one season.